Okay, so I uh I don't I was just thinking about life on my way to work one day, and I was thinking about paradigms, and I kind of came up with three waves: an atheist, an agnostic, and a Christian. Um, and to me, an atheist, which is not believing in anything. I hope I'm having that correct, right? You believe in as soon as you die, life ends. It's done. It's nothing behind those 100 years or 80 years that you're alive. Correct?
Well, when I think of atheist, I think of somebody who just believes that there is no God. Um, I do think that there are probably some atheistic people out there who believe in things like reincarnation. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Where like you do have a spirit or a soul, and that you can reincarnate into like animals, or you've had past lives as other people or animals, but there is no God. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's an interesting point of view because I'm
Reincarnation.
th- yeah because I'm thinking of two ways. If from the first perspective that there's nothing and it ends right away, like to me that is a very kind of pointless, unmotivating point of view. I'm working for nothing. Disregard all the religion, everything,
Mm-hmm.
just from uh, a viewpoint of life.
Yeah.
Like there is no end goal. I'm not working for anything because
Once you die, lights are out.
it's done.
Yep.
Um, if you believe in reincarnation, that's a little different. That's kind of a reckless in my mind because you're like, if I die, I'm going to turn into a giraffe. It's like
Well,
it's like playing a video game in real life.
right. Well, my understanding of it is, and I believe it's more of an Eastern religion thing, but that it's where the philosophy of karma comes from, and that
Mm.
you accumulate these this karma throughout your lifetimes, and it advances you through the whatever you want to call it structure of different lives that there are to be lived. Like by acting, you know, beneficial to your fellow man while you're alive, you're accumulating karma, which is going to cause you to reincarnate as a more positive entity or beneficial experience in your next life. Whereas if you are hurtful to your fellow man and you build up negative karma, then you're going to be reincarnated into a life that's more miserable and more suffering until you kind of figure it out and you know but this is all, this could be Eastern religions that have gods and don't have gods. That, I mean, there's a whole spectrum of it that's going on there. So it's tough for me to just wrap up atheism alone in that when you think that when you die the lights are out, because you know what I mean. There's different like
Yeah.
systems in place that believe it
Uh-huh.
keeps going on, but
Yeah.
just that there is no benevolent creator. I mean, so I guess maybe you could break up atheism into like people who believe there's no God, and then you could have also like people who just believe like when you die the lights are out and it's over.
Hmm. Well, okay. Well, kind of shifting my ideas here. What's the definition of agnostic? Let's look it up.
When I think of agnostic, I think of somebody is saying, I don't know if there is a God or not. I
Okay, I
don't
didn't
care
say
that you believe it or not. I just want to ignore religion and theology altogether. I want to be you know, asexual, if you want to call it that, in terms of religion and theism. Like I'm just ignoring it completely.
that was kind of well. I mean, my thought of agnostic was more of lost. I don't not believe in it. but I don't believe in it. I am
Okay.
just
Not willing to commit to it.
I'm not committed. I don't know if I believe in it. I don't know if I don't. According to Oxford Languages, a person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence of nature of God or anything beyond material phenomena, a person who claims neither faith nor disbelief in God. Okay,
That's
so the big
agnostic.
takeaway there is or can be known, saying we can't figure anything out. It's impossible to figure something out, which is interesting.
Yeah, like it just can't be proven.
It can never be proven, which is tough. Which is
Favorite quote from the Santa Claus. Yeah, Neil, but have you ever seen $1 million? Doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
oh gosh, yeah.
That's where my head goes. I mean, this is what the problem that I have with atheism is that to me, it speaks of somebody who is being dishonest with themselves or going through life without having their mind open, because I can't comprehend going through life with eyes and ears open wide, trying to learn and trying to figure out how the world works and what's going on, and not being able to pick up some of the clues along the way that have been there, like that there is a divine creator and that he is benevolent towards us as humans. You know what I mean? Like there's too many indicators in the course of a human life that can point to a creator. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this brings me back to a conversation I had with a guy on here already, but it was, if you look at everything in the world, there is always a creator. In everything in the world, there's a painter and everything. Every picture, there's a canvas, and there's someone who's putting the pen to the paper, and there's got to be something,
right?
But I mean, I'm gonna shift here.
Okay.
When you were talking about keeping your eyes open, I can honestly think about my life before I was a Christian. I never really felt God. It wasn't until I finally committed and was like, "Hey, dude, I'm in it." When I started doing that and started praying a little bit and reading the Bible, it was like he just punched me in the face.
Right.
So,
right.
But if you're never even willing to try that, then I don't know if you would quite see it because you're seeing everything from a different lens.
So I will give you that. It is 100% true that once you begin to put effort, intention, and open-heartedness into Christianity is when you actually start to get the results out of it, right? Like that's when it becomes pretty freaking tangible. But that aside, I still think that if you're being truly open-minded, even if you don't know anything about religion, I think eventually at some point during your life, you'll most likely see something that causes you to have to think from that perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like over the course
it's kind of like I don't know if you've heard the analogy that God will knock at your door, but you have
sooner or later. Sooner or later,
he's gonna knock, but you have to open the door and let him in.
Yeah,
you can't slam it on his face.
Yep.
That's the coolest part about Christianity and this belief system is that I probably slammed it in his face 12 times, and then I let him in. You know, and every time I open the door, he's standing there.
Yep.
It's like if somebody slammed the door in my face, I'm gout.
Yeah, you just leave.
And that's why he's different. You know what I mean? It's
100%.
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy thought.
That's a really good point. But I do, and I think I see, yeah, a little bit more, I guess you would call it intellectual honesty in the agnostic side of things than I do in the atheistic side of things, because I I can appreciate if somebody is just, because I've struggled with this before too. It's like trying to find that tangible proof of God's existence when you don't know a ton about God or the church in general, and you're just kind of trying to figure out life to begin with anyways. Like, that's a tall order to be able to say, I 100% firmly believe that this is real and the truth and the only
Yeah.
way of life. You know what I mean? I get that. So, but it's, and from that same lens, it's easy for me to look at then the atheistic one as like, okay, well, you're just not open to learning. You know what I mean? Like, you're just shutting it off completely. And it's like, because you can't prove something 100%, you're just saying 100% it's not true, which to me is kind of a dishonest approach.
What would you say to the person that had tried Christianity and turned atheist?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, for me, it would come down to like, what caused you to become atheist and not believe in God? And I bet you 9 out of 10 times, most of the things would point to the humans that were a part of Christianity that did things that were not of the Lord. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we have a real issue with the world and looking at Christianity in general as like, we just see what human beings are doing and we think, well, they were a Christian and they just did that terrible thing, so obviously Christianity is terrible, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the way we interpret everything that we come across, and it's just not an accurate way to look at the big picture.
Well, the problem is we live in a materialistic world. I mean,
Right?
that's the point of view of the world, is you can only see what's in front of you, right? I mean,
yeah, and you're leaving a lot of perspective untouched when you have that.
yeah,
I think.
Which is hard, because I get it, like, sort of. Like, if I'm looking at a human being and what they've done with their world, I can only see what they've done. I can't see the struggle they went through or the pain they felt or anything that happened. I can only see what results they put out.
Yeah.
So I get that mindset, but that's not a Christian way of thinking.
No, it's not. And to me, this is what I don't know if I'm going to say titillated or engaged the left side logical portion of my brain, when I'm a young man trying to figure out what's real and what's not. When I just like logically step back and look at society, and I can, analytically say, okay, well, Christianity is a framework, just like Buddhism, just like communism, just like capitalism. These are all just like different frameworks or software programs that we can apply to our societies, right? When I just step back and analyze all of those from a positive and negative, plus or minus, pro and con perspective, Christianity wins out every time. You know what I mean? When you take a framework that includes things like grace and forgiveness, it's really the only frameworks that can have net positive overall effects on society. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be downsides. There's going to be humans that take things too far in one direction or the other and ruin things for a lot of people. That's always going to be the case. But when you step back and just look at the framework, like, okay, well, what other system, allows for your neighbor who was going through a hard time and said something mean to you, without that forgiveness and the ability to move past that and give them grace and say, hey, there's going to be times in my life when I'm at my wit's end and I say the wrong things. I need to give grace to this person and forgive them and allow us to move forward from this. You know what I mean? That is that's society building right there. You know what I mean? That's human interconnectedness, like at its core. That's how it happens. We're all existing, living our lives, trying to provide for our families, and we're going to bump up against each other. How we react with that, I think that's what makes Christianity so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And there's one other side. I don't know if I've kind of made a big perspective change, because there's some things where I just don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
is this okay for me to do, or is it not? And a lot of times I look at, does it damage the vessel? Is it helping my body and my physical body? Because I'm like looking for this. Everything that is Christian centered nurtures the body. Like, I mean, if you look at why Andrew Huberman is religious, it's because of prayer, right? It's like the mental and physical restorativeness. I don't know what a good word for that is, but is so beneficial to the mind and body that it only makes sense. It's gonna make you feel better just by doing it.
Right.
Praying with gratitude, or like I listened to who was it? Oh gosh, it was a great podcast. But he's like, I visualize myself in a time that I was grateful. Like I put myself right back in that place and I relive it in gratitude. And it's like that. He's like, that's how I start my day. I enter with that, and that's 100% what Christianity is talking about.
Yeah.
And all it's doing is nurturing your mind and body. So I've kind of taken that kind of perspective. And then after I'm like, okay, this is good for me. Does it align with the Bible? And every single time it has.
Right. And that's a natural part of like prayer posture is gratitude, thankfulness to the Lord. Like that's a huge part of it.
So, yeah.
Well, speaking of gratitude, what would you trade your life for Warren Buffett's? How grateful are you?
Oh, I think this is it's like a testament to time.
Yeah.
Time is much more valuable, I think. So no, I would not.
Cut that open a little bit. So time is more valuable, and that's why you wouldn't want to be Warren Buffett. Just because he's at an older stage in life? Is that what you mean?
Yes. I'm more thinking of like, yes, he's at an older stage. Yes, he has anything you could dream of. But if I was 80 or however old Warren Buffett is, with all that money, I would still be the super unwise individual. Like, I'm carrying this mindset to an 80-year-old. No, I want that experience. I want the change. And so that just seems silly, right? And the most satisfying thing is doing it. Like, you put all your energy and resources into something, and then it turns out, right? Then you get to reap the rewards. You reap what you sow, and that is the satisfying part. That's the fulfilling part. You said you're going to do something, then you did it.
That's where the character's at. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I never understood how valuable time is until recently, and I'm like, yes, we really don't have that much time here. I feel like the weeks, like I blink and then the weekend's over and the week's over, and I'm like, where is my time going? It just goes by so fast. I'm like, let's be here. Let's be now. Let's be very direct in what we're doing and what we're saying.
Yeah, and it's so funny how so much of these things just go hand in hand together, because you also talked about looking at things quarterly. Like that is a really great perspective shift. I do this all the time with even the littlest things, like how often we go out to dinner. I think of things like, oh, okay, well, we did that like every 3 months at this one restaurant in that we really like in Olympia. Okay, so that's a quarterly thing, which means I do it 4 times a year, which means if I've got 40 years of life left, I'm looking at 160 times that I'm going to eat this particular dinner again for the rest of my life, like for my existence on this earth. That's a really, really great perspective shift to have in terms of leading you towards gratitude, being grateful for the opportunities and the time that you do have currently and taking advantage of it and not leaving it on the table, daydreaming about being Warren Buffett, living your life instead. Like they go so well together.
Yeah. And one of the pieces I heard was, if you're living away from your parents or away from your family or whatever, and you only see them twice a year, maybe 3 times. I mean, if they're 60, you're going to see them 60 times left.
Yep.
I mean, or if you see them once a year and they're 80, you might only see them twice.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's depressing and kind of a sad thing to think about, but it's also like real.
It is very real. There's no avoiding it.
Yeah. So, and once you know that, it really is, it's like either you take action or you keep living the same way you've been living.
Yeah.
Open to change.
And you think about, I've even seen people who have calendars that break down their entire lifespan into the weeks, and they cross off the weeks as, and then you get this visual representation of how full and empty it is filled out wise is like your whole lifespan. You're like, oh geez, every Friday I go up there and put another tick mark in that thing and fill up my life, clock.
Yeah.
Put things into perspective.
I don't know if I'd want that in my house.
That's a freaking tough view right there, man. That's a harsh thing to be reminded about all the time.
But that's a realist, man. I mean, if you're doing that, I wouldn't mind having.
I don't have one of them calendars, but
I wouldn't mind having one for a year, because I mean, if you look at 52 little dots on the wall, it's like, whew. I mean, because when I read the 7 Habits, we just talked about that earlier. It talks about scheduling your time in weeks and putting what's most true to yourself into those time blocks first. So like time with family, that should go in first, or time with whatever, with God, that should go in first. Like those are the things that should go in first.
Yep.
But when I stopped seeing my time in 24-hour periods and sense of a week, it seems manageable to be able to do a bunch of different things. And so, yeah, that's been that's probably my biggest mindset shift and change, is ever since I read that book, I just started blocking everything in weeks. But 7 days, go for it. So if I had 52, little weeks on my wall, that would be like, okay, well, we're dwindling here. Weeks go by so stinking quick in my mind. That would be a great motivating and direction.
What a great perspective to have too. Like you get, and it goes, I mean, I'm sure I've talked to you about this before. It's like that kind of a mindset will keep you engaged in the present, such that as time goes on, the results will be undeniable. You're living life at a pace or an integrity or at an involvement that it's easy to predict what your future is going to look like. Like you take these actions every single day consistently, a week at a time, right? Then I can tell you in 52 weeks, you are going to be exponentially further along in those critical areas, because that's what you invested your time, energy, and intention into. It's really easy to see when you have larger time spans in play, like, oh, okay, now I can look back after 5 years of doing these activities. There's these crazy results from it. You know what I mean? You get an excellent perspective across your whole life, seeing how to execute the change that you want to in your life.
Yeah. And And I'm going to take a page out of Melanie's book that she told me because I'm just starting my journey in this work world and
Yeah.
in journey here. So, and she's like, you can only focus on so much, Logan. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? Because I on my vision board behind me, I have 7 pillars. I have 7 aspects of my life that I truly, deeply care about.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me dead in the face and said, you can't focus on all of them. So I was like, okay, for quarter 1, scheduling time in quarter, I'm going to focus on these 3 things. I can fit those 3 things, got to go into my weekly schedule first.
Yep.
After that, everything else is kind of like an afterthought. It's like, if I have extra time, if I have one day a month on this, I'm okay with it. Two times a month, I'm cool with it. But I'm not going to spend weekly time on this. So that was one of the pages I took out of Melanie's book. She's a pretty sharp individual.
Yep. Oh boy, howdy! Don't I know it?
Yeah, you could just experience it firsthand.
Yep, that's a powerful tool right there, though. Being that intentional with your time, it leads to crazy results. It just takes time.
Yeah, and discipline.
Yeah.
I mean,
boy, howdy! What doesn't take discipline these days?
Yeah, that's almost like an overused word. I feel like let's make a new one for it.
Yeah, you just be called doing the right thing.
You can't do but you can't do anything quarterly if you're not doing anything weekly or daily.
Yep,
you can't do the thing if you're not doing the thing.
100%, and you won't see the results.
Nope. And then you're like, then you look back and you're like, well, I was focusing on it. Why didn't I get the results? Well, you didn't actually do it.
Yeah. That's for sure. Things take action.
Yeah. Yep. And it's crazy to think about. We just, when I wrote goals I wrote them the first of the year when we talked about it over Christmas break. I took a week and wrote out all my goals and my direction of my life and whatnot. And I wrote, I got 10 to 30-year goals and 1-year goals and 5-year goals and goals, 2-year goals, 3 years goals. I got goals for everything. But I also wrote out, this quarter. What are my goals for this quarter? And then, man, it's almost March.
Yeah.
That quarter's almost over.
Yep. You got your head down in there getting things done, though. That's what makes the time fly by.
Yeah. Time goes by so fast. Sometimes I want it to speed up. Sometimes I want it to slow down.
Yeah, I think enjoying it while you can, though, that's important.
Yeah. Well, you had a big vacation there not too long ago. What was your how was your reflection time? What you pull out of it?
It was great. The biggest takeaway for us as a family was that we just needed to get back into hiking regularly as a family because we enjoy it so much, and it's like literally one of the biggest cup refillers in the world for us.
Hiking.
Yeah.
Nice.
We used to do it all the time up in Alaska, and we just, obviously life gets busy and you cut things out and you prioritize different stuff. And that was one thing that we're starting to want to try and work back into our life because it's such a positive benefit to us. Health, mental health, like you name it. There's a lot of great things come from it.
Yeah. And too bad we don't have the trails like Alaska does. They got a bunch of trails up there, but
yeah, their national parks or their state park system is pretty top notch. They've got a lot of cool programs up there where they bring in interns every summer or, like temporary, like people who just want to work for the summer and just build trail systems and maintain them and stuff. It's really neat.
Huh. So would you think that's going to be like a monthly thing or
we're
try to get out there once a week?
I mean, it's at least monthly for sure. I don't know about weekly.
Yeah, weekly would be tough.
Yeah.
Maybe bi-monthly.
Yeah, maybe twice a month. That would be great.
Yeah. Kind of like this podcast, bi-monthly.
Yeah.
I really do. I think we got a good system going on here. I like it. I like what we've been doing here.
I agree, and it's nicer to take. I think, anyways, the 2 week snapshot of the world. There's
Yeah.
there's plenty to talk about in there. Every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
there's a lot of life that happens.
Yeah. I've been thinking about recently, um, like signing up for the newspaper again, and
Like a
taking
subscription.
Sundays. They do. Yeah, it's a subscription somewhere. I don't know how to get it, but like doing my communities and like Davenport's and like trying to like because we talked about staying up with what's in front of you, and I'm like, how do I do that? And so it's like I got to get back in the newspaper. Is that what we got to do, or do they have like online subscriptions? How do I get
You mean just to
community
keep
news?
tabs on your local community?
I think I mean we've talked about this before. I think it's incredibly important. So how do I do it? That's one of the thoughts that came up actually a few times this
Well,
past week.
I think you're talking about the second best method to do it. Probably there are probably local publications that you can track down online that would give you a pretty good glimpse into the local community's goings ons. But I think, take this for what you will, whether it's good or bad. I honestly think Facebook is probably the best source for like small community uh, information and intel, like what's going on in the community, what people's opinions are on every little local issue. I mean, it all gets hashed out on Facebook.
Really? And what guess what sort of website do you or what person or in do you follow?
Well, there's all these groups. Facebook is really chunked up into groups that I noticed rural America really took off from. And a lot of people will break things up either by county or by a cluster of a couple cities, depending on like the geographics of the region and how big things are. Like you'll get like in Southwest Washington, you'll get larger cities that will group together and form groups like Battleground, Longview, and like these clusters of areas that will create groups that are just like buy sell trade groups, or they have like moms in the area groups, or they have like Republican or Democrat in the area groups, whatever, or they even just have the generic ones that are just like issues affecting that particular community, and the moderators just bring into the discussion on a whatever basis, daily or weekly, whenever things happen, and people hash out there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's social media, so you're going to get the keyboard warrior response from every single human being that's participating in it, right? But
Yeah, that's kind of like I get what you're saying, but I just want the facts. I'm not super worried about
opinions,
what people think.
yeah.
I'm worried about where are these groups getting their information from. That's where I want to go. I want to go to the source. I want to know what laws are getting pushed and who's getting thrown in jail and for what reason and what we're doing and going. What the heck's happening?
Yeah. Then I think maybe newspaper would be a good bet.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. Well, I mean, what's most tangible for me? That's going to be a hard one to stew on because
Right.
I'm not willing to spend a bunch of time on it, but I want to know.
Well, and it's tough too because communities used to do all of that stuff in person. Like and life has changed. Like, I mean, public participation has plummeted from the last
All right.
2 decades. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're mostly at home on our screens
Yeah.
as a species nowadays. Where you
Yeah.
used
And
to
I
be
need to be
always out
better.
at the
Like,
community fair or whatever.
yeah. And I need to be better at like going to like school board meetings and just like staying up to date. I mean, I don't know how else to do it. Especially, I mean, I'm in the school system, so I'm sort of up to date, but
Yeah.
you really can get down with what's going on if you're keeping up monthly on the school board meetings. And I should probably hit like my school and Davenport's and what's going on. So maybe I'll start with that and then move forward.
I'm at least twice as guilty of that as you are. Of just not. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I went recently to the sheriff held some town hall meetings and stuff like that because of a issue that was going on in the community, and I attended one of those, and it was a reminder. Like that's how there is still meetings that go on with your local government, like city councils or county commissioners still hold meetings, and for the most part, it's tough because a lot of the people that attend these things right now, anyways, it seems like don't necessarily have a ton to actually contribute in terms of perspective and work ethic in the community and things like that. We've all kind of prioritized working on our own individual things instead of participating in community things like that. And what it does, in my opinion anyways, is leave it open for the people who have nothing but free time on their hands to go and complain to the government and that kind of stuff. And I can start to see why a local government anyways will begin to experience like a lot of just resistance towards the public and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you think about those people that have too much times,
right?
Like the lazier people,
right?
What are they going to ask for from the government? Because they're asking from the state to help their community, but if they're representing the whole community, that's not who the whole community is. Everybody else is just heads down, nose to the grindstone.
Right?
You're not getting what the actual most of the population needs, and that's like. So I think about what do I need, and I need to be more aware of what's going on in the community. Well, if I start showing up to some of these meetings as a nobody, I am a nobody, right? So, and I just listen in. Well, we have a section. You could come on here, and if someone had a local podcast here, I'd probably tap into it.
Right.
So, I don't know. I just got to start getting out there and listening and
engaged
being
and involved.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Which is tough, take your time away from that and to go do it. But I don't know. I feel like a hypocrite if I'm not doing it.
I second that.
So maybe that's something we should work on.
Yeah, I struggle with the same thing.